A year and a half ago, we bought this Crashpad Swag, and as you can see, it's been through quite a lot. Snow, deserts, wind, mountains, you name it, we've camped in it. So I think it's finally time we do a full review and see if this tent is really worth purchasing. Let's take a look. So we've been through a lot of tents. We've done normal ground tents, we've done rooftop tents, we've slept in the back of trucks, we've slept on the roof of my Jeep actually. We've done a lot of different styles of camping, and so far the Swag is still our favorite. One reason is this canvas bag that it comes in. It's nice because it has enough space in it to actually put all of your sleeping gear inside the tent and then roll it up inside this bag. It does make it a little big, but once you get it in the bag, there's enough space in here to zip everything up. And we use quite bulky gear. We use full-size pillows and full-size sleeping bags and stuff, and it does fit in here, which is nice. The other thing that we thought is with the canvas bag, we can huck it outside, and clearly we have. This is from actually our Nevada hot spring trip part 1, where we got into some mud, and this was in the trailer. And what's nice about it is once you get this open, the tent is nice and clean and there's no mud in it at all. It's not too hard to get out of here either. You just kind of pull it out. Then your tent comes out. What we do with the bag actually is we kind of flip it back up and we put our shoes and stuff in here, and then we use this as a doormat to get into our tent, and it works perfect like that. So when you go to roll this thing up, you have to keep it together. It's like a giant sleeping bag, kind of. Remember when you were a kid and you went camping and you rolled up that big sleeping bag and you had to like roll it and then lace it together so it doesn't come flying apart? This is kind of the same way. And this is where we get into our first failure with the Swag. So it comes with these, I'm assuming they're nylon straps. They're nice and wide and they're big, but the buckles are plastic. And as you can see, we've already broken one. And so what we do is we just, for now, we feed it through this buckle and then tie it back around, and that holds it together. But honestly, this part is not a good design. I wish these were metal instead of plastic. It would have held together much better. I'm actually thinking of just getting some like some sort of strap and a cam lock and just wrapping around and pulling it tight, and that'll do the trick. You don't have to get it super tight, but this plastic buckle thing, that's not a good design. Once you have those undone, the thing just kind of unrolls pretty easily like this, and your tent is pretty close to being set up. You just have your poles. They come in these nice bags, and the bags have weathered pretty well. We're not kind to this stuff. We're pretty hard on it, if I'm quite honest. A trick here when you go to roll your Swag up is to actually take your poles in the bag and put it at the end and kind of use it as like some sort of, like, it's kind of like a rod to help you get the roll started. It works really well like that. Our poles are fine. We've not had a single problem with them, except for our cross pole, or our ridge pole, I guess. It's not that the pole broke, but there is a bungee in there that's supposed to keep these together and stop them from getting separated. And obviously that's really no more. So the tent's completely functional and has no issues, but you have to be careful you don't lose these two. I'm sure Crashpad would probably send me a new one if I contacted them. I just haven't. I wanted to see what the tent would do and how it would hold up. So this was our, well, honestly, like our second failure. Now the tent does come with stakes, and it comes in this nice bag. It's the same material as what the poles come in. I like that because I feel like it helps protect the canvas material from sharp metal pieces. Now the stakes that it does come with, they're okay. They're average at best, to be honest. You tap them too hard and you're gonna bend them just like any other stake. And here's one of them. They're average. To be honest, we don't really use these. We normally use your normal like spikes, and we drive those into the ground if we really have to stake this thing down. But to be honest, most of the time, we don't stake the tent down, if ever. I can maybe count 3 or 4 times we've actually had to stake it down, and usually it's just in really high wind. In fact, in our Nevada trip, I'll link to it, this part 1, we were camping in 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, and we didn't even stake it down the entire time. We just put it out, put our gear in it, and got in it, and it stayed totally fine. Just the way it's shaped, and because it's canvas, it's automatically heavy, so the wind has a harder time taking it. But in really high wind situations, we do stake it out as a caution. We just did it that time, and there was no problems with it. All right, so setting this tent up, I actually find it fairly easy. Basically, you have 3 poles, and there's no material to fish it through. It's all exterior clips, which is my favorite design for a tent because you don't have to fight nylon or something when you're stuffing a pole through. So you've got these little hooks on the end. Clip one there. And you clip one here. And then you just go to your body clips or your tent clips, whatever they are, and you just start clipping them on. And once you have your 2 poles in, the last step is really to hook your ridge pole in, I think they call it. And it's very simple. It just goes one there, and you stick one right here. Like that. Once you have the 2 sides hooked in, you just undo this clasp here, give a little push to tighten things up a little bit, clip those clips on, and you're good to go. So one thing that's really nice about the Swag is that once you've got to this point, your bed is basically set up, especially if you have gear already inside of it. A lot of times, probably about 70–80% of the time, we store our gear inside of it when we go camping or exploring. So when you get to the stage, your sleeping bags and your pillows are already kind of laid out. You just got to do a quick adjustment and then get in. I think that's because everything rolls, so it kind of just stays in whatever place you put it in when you go to roll it up. Now, one thing that we found out is that when you go to zip this up, leave a little bit of the bottom unzipped, and that helps you squeeze the air out of this. This canvas is really tightly woven, so it will hold air when you go to roll it. But we get around that just by leaving a few little holes in places, and we've not had a single problem with dirt getting in or any kind of weather getting in because we always put it in the canvas bag. So the meshing, it's actually no CM mesh, which is nicer. Like if you go to certain parts of Utah or certain like other areas, you'll actually get bugs that are finer than mosquitoes, and they'll find their way in, and no seams bite, and it sucks. But this mesh keeps them all out. It's pretty tough stuff. We've not had a single problem with it. There's no holes, no tears, nothing like that. And actually, it's held up so well, it still looks brand new. And that's really impressive because oftentimes when we go camping, we just take this top flap and we throw it over the side like that and just leave it there. And then we just leave this side open, and then we camp all night with our tent mostly open with this meshing exposed. So that's been really nice, and we really like that. And it's held up really well. Okay, now here we are on the inside. The first thing I'll have you note is that we have a feather problem. That's just because we use down sleeping bags and they shed a little bit. This cover does collect that kind of does collect the feathers easily, but we just go in here and give it a vacuum every once in a while when it annoys us. The mattress is nice. It's fairly thick. It's 3 inches or so. We get really comfortable sleeps out of this thing. In fact, the entire tent, Helen and I maintain that this is the best sleep we've ever had in a tent, ever. And that's after owning 2 or 3 different types of rooftop tents, owning backpacking tents, owning mattresses that you air up. This is the best sleep we've ever gotten in a tent, and it's fantastic. Now, one thing to be careful of with a canvas tent like this is mold. Canvas can mold fairly easily if you're not careful with it. It's not a huge concern, but basically what it means is if you get moisture on the inside of the tent, you just got to open up and let it dry out. And that's pretty easy to do. So what we'll do is if we know that the tent collected some sort of water on the inside or moisture on the inside, when we get home from our trip, we'll just open it up and let it air out. If it's a small amount of moisture, it ends up clearing itself out anyway by just having it open when you're sleeping in it. So there's that. So here we are on the inside. This thing is gigantic. Helen and I we can spread out in here, and we're just fine. We're very comfortable. It looks cozy, but you have quite a lot of space. In the summer, we can spread out. If we're too hot, we can actually bring both our double fold bags full of clothes and throw it at the bottom and still be completely comfortable in here and not crammed, which is really, really nice. The other thing about this is like every corner has a huge vent. So this whole door on both sides are a giant vent, and then you have a big vent at your head and a big vent at your feet. And the ventilation has never been a problem in this thing. We've never really been hot, even camping in the middle of deserts. So the inside of the Swag does have a pretty big negative, and that's the height. While the width and length are kind of equivalent to like a double bed, and that's awesome for sleeping, it's not so awesome for hanging out in or like getting changed. Basically, if your average height or bigger, changing this thing is going to be like a lay down situation, and that's just, it is what it is because of the height. Now, what we have found though is that there are ways around that if you need privacy to change. One of them is to position the tent in such a way where our vehicle blocks vision coming from where you guys are seeing, and then the other 3 walls of the tent provide you kind of a shelter. And because it's canvas, you can't see through it, so it makes a good privacy like square if you need to do that. And that's kind of something we've used to work around in the past when we've needed privacy. Though that's very rare. We typically not camped in groups, and we're usually camped in the middle of nowhere, so we don't really have that problem with changing. One advantage though that we figured out, and I don't think this was done by design, I think it just is because the way the shape of the tent is. Let's say you're camping in the desert and you need maximum airflow to stay cool, right? So you open this whole thing up, but the morning comes and you're gonna have that awesome sunlight beaming right into your eyes and searing your retinas and waking you up. Well, what we found out is that if you just flop the edges of the tent over the doors and don't zip them or roll them up, then when morning comes and you need that protection, all you do is you grab the corner and you just pull it down, and the way this thing falls, it's actually gonna fall with the curvature of the tent and keep the space. It's not gonna come right down on top of you. And that's just nice in the morning when you need that extra hour of sleep and the sun's up. You can just flip this down real quick and keep sleeping and not really worry about it. Okay, so here's a quick demonstration of what happens when you use that trick. You just take this and flip it down, and you can see the material pretty much stays on the outside of the tent without having to zip anything or mess with it. So the last thing I want to talk about on the outside of the tent is these weather flaps here. These are really nice. Honestly, we don't use them very much unless it's bad weather, but when we've used them, we've never had a problem with them. They shed water perfectly. They help secure the tent down if you need to, and on top of that, they allow you to open up this window on the inside completely without fear of water or dirt or anything coming in, yet still get tons of ventilation, so that's great. Now, the one negative that most of you are going to point out is its size, and honestly, it is pretty big and it can be a bear to handle sometimes, though I would say it's easier than a rooftop tent. Having had 2 to 3 rooftop tents that are the clamshell style, we think this is far easier, quicker to set up, and way more comfortable. Although this is a pretty high-end ground tent compared to average rooftop tents, so there is that. No system is going to be perfect, to be honest. No matter how much money you spend, it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be pros and cons to each one, and you just have to figure out what are things you can deal with. The size of this tent specifically, we don't have a problem with. We can deal with it. It's something we're willing to put up with because we like the tent and because it's so comfortable and so quick to set up. It's what we like. So the answer is, do I recommend this tent? And it has to be an absolute yes if you're looking at a ground tent. It's awesome. It sets up quick and tears down quick. Your gear can be stored inside of it. It makes no noise in the wind. That's awesome and very hard to find. You guys who've camped in the desert with wind you will know. Your gear stored inside of it, and it's just super durable. I can't tell you how many nights we spent in this thing because we're gone so much. But what I can tell you is we're gone at least twice a month. During the times we have extra time, we spend 2 to 3 weeks out of this thing, and you can see it's still in really good condition, and I think it's going to be one of those pieces of gear that it lasts a very long time with minimal effort. So we love it. We're going to keep it. Yeah, we're super happy that we bought it. It's the best system for sleeping in that we've had so far, and I don't know how we can do too much better than this, to be honest. So with that, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Nevada hot springs trip, where we're trying to find cool hot springs in Nevada. You'll see it in action there. So thank you guys. We'll see you in the next video. I think we did okay. We made it through. Oh no, your boots.
Oh no.
They're not bad on the inside. These my boots the rest of the trip.
Hell in the swag.
Oh shit.
It has a puddle of mud on the top.
Oh no.